Hey guys, welcome back to my Wentworth Life YouTube channel and welcome to the next Prisoner review installment. In this video I am going to be reviewing Prisoner Cell Block H episode 20, Goodbye Franky. And yes, this is indeed Franky Doyle's final ever episode. Before I jump into that part of the episode, I wanted to start this one off with Catherine Roberts, who ended up squishing a man to death with her car. So as soon as the episode starts, Catherine is already in Wentworth being taken to her cell during the night by Meg. Now we don't really get to see Catherine interacting very much with the other women in this episode, which I was a little bit disappointed with, apart from the scene where she is in the shower block with Lynn, Karen and a few of the background characters. And there's this one background character who uses Catherine's deodorant without asking, and Catherine is like, oh, you could have asked me and could have been polite. And Lynn and Karen, they try to warn Catherine to just leave it, things are different in prison. But just from that small interaction scene, it's obvious that some of the women think that Catherine is a stuck-up cow. Even Lynn calls her a lady. Ken Roberts ends up hiring Steve Wilson to be Catherine's solicitor, and he gets her out on bail because, they can afford it. When Catherine is out on bail and back at home until her trial, she is convinced that the jury are never going to, convict her. They're going to fully understand why she did what she did, but husband Ken doesn't share the same opinion, and to be honest, neither do I. Now, Steve Wilson wants to tell the court that Catherine was temporarily insane at the time of the crime, which Catherine doesn't seem to want to go with. I mean, in her eyes, she knew exactly what she was doing, but Steve warns her that this could mean the difference between murder and manslaughter. So what will Catherine do in her trial? Well, we'll just have to wait and see on that one. Karen also had a visit with Steve in this episode, and he accidentally lets slip that Dr. Miller is paying him to represent her, and she isn't best pleased. She goes to see Dr. Miller and tells him that she's concerned that he is getting too close for comfort with her, and she has seen what this can do to the women who are in prison. So she basically tells him that it's completely over, it's done. And poor Dr. Miller, he looked so sad when she said this to him. I totally think that Karen is just in total denial here, because she later on goes to her cell and she dreams about Dr. Miller. And no, not those kind of dreams, you dirty buggers. She just dreams about their past conversations that they've had in the prison, and it's quite obvious that she still loves him. I did notice that Bea and Lizzie were not in this episode, not even in the background in the shower block or anything. Where were they? Quite mysterious. I mean, I would have thought that Bea would have been in it, because she's one of the main characters of the show. Bit of a strange one. Maybe they were concentrating on Franky's departure in this episode, which now leads me on to this tragic story. So Franky tells Doreen that she wants them both to hold up a bank, as it will set them up for life, and Franky wants to set up a farm in memory of her brother. Now, of course, Doreen is horrified, and, she doesn't want to do any of this. And this is where we learn a little bit more of a backstory on Franky, because we find out that Franky ended up in prison for doing a similar thing that went very, very wrong, and Franky's girlfriend at that time who was helping her, she ended up getting killed during the robbery. So Doreen really isn't up for going the same way, but Franky is determined to do some sort of job. So Doreen compromises and gets Doreen to hold up a shop rather than a bank, but when they go to do it, they are spotted by a copper who recognizes them both. Now this cop ends up following them for a little bit, and then Franky and Doreen, they make a run for it, and he ends up chasing them. Now Doreen ends up falling over, and Franky goes back to help her. Franky then pulls out this gun that she stole in the last episode, and she ends up shooting the cop in the arm or in the shoulder. She doesn't kill him, put it that way, because the copper then ends up shooting Franky right in the stomach in front of a horrified Doreen. This is it for Franky. She's not going to survive this, and Doreen holds Franky in her arms while people are just standing around and watching. But Franky tells Doreen to run before the cops arrive, and it's a really heartbreaking watch. Doreen is absolutely distraught by what is happening in front of her and doesn't want to leave Franky, but she does do as Franky asks her, and she makes a run for it, and then Franky just lies down on the grass alone, and she passes away before uttering the final words, "bloody bastards." It's such a shame that the actress couldn't stick around on the show for longer when Prisoner was originally extended. Franky was such a iconic, fantastic, great, complex character who everyone remembers from just 20 episodes. Imagine how different the show could have been if Franky had been around for a little bit longer. Colette Mann, who plays Doreen, really outdoes herself in this episode. After Franky dies, Doreen is in a hell of a state in some park somewhere, throwing and kicking things at bystanders and abusing them and calling, cops killers before running away. Eventually, Doreen walks back to Wentworth Detention Centre and hands herself in. Now, this is where we see that Doreen is not the timid, lovable Doreen who we all know and love. After everything that has happened, Doreen has turned very bitter and nasty, particularly towards the police who end up interviewing her at Wentworth. Now, Doreen basically tells them all to piss off, and when Vera tells Doreen to shut it, Doreen is like, "What are you gonna do, Vera? Throw me in the pound? Bash me up?" And even Vera's face is in shock at the way Doreen is acting. When Vera is escorting Doreen back to H Block, they walk past Karen's cell and Doreen stops and goes in. Doreen tells Karen that Franky never would have escaped if it wasn't for her, and accuses Karen of being the main cause of Franky's death. Doreen then attacks Karen before Vera breaks it up, and you can hear Doreen being pulled down the corridor saying things like, I'm gonna get you for Franky. She loved you, but you made her run and now she's dead." Wow, what an episode, and what a complete change of direction this show has just gone in. This whole story with Doreen and Franky on the run was really well portrayed in my opinion. At the start of their escape, it all seemed like fun and games at first, and then they stayed with Miss McBride, but towards the end you could see just how much more and more desperate they were becoming and how rough they were starting to look, and it all ended in tragedy in the end. I am for one really going to miss Franky Doyle. So another fantastic episode. I always remember episode 20 being the episode where Franky was killed off, and I think it was always, ingrained in my brain. I am really looking forward to seeing the fallout from this in upcoming episodes. My favourite part of this episode for me, I think, is the moment where Franky and Doreen are chased and then you have the shootout. Even though it is a tragic moment, it was really action-packed and I really enjoyed it. My least favourite moment has to be when Doreen was having a complete mental breakdown in the park with all of those people just watching. I didn't like that, and there was this one woman who was like, "Oh, she needs to be locked away." I didn't like it at all. Anyway guys, let's hear some of your thoughts about episode 20, Franky's final episode. What were your first thoughts about this episode when you first watched it? Also, if you were around at the time of this episode first ever going to air, then let me know if it was already revealed that Franky was leaving the show and she was being killed off, or was it a total shock and a total surprise when it first aired? I'll be really interested to know. Okay then guys, well thank you all for taking the time to watch this video today. Make sure you enjoy the rest of your weekend, stay safe out there, and I will see you all again very, very soon.